Hey there, welcome. Today I want to talk about how we react to the word God, to the notion of God, to conversations about God, and kind of to religious, spiritual notions in general. I find that there is, even in spiritual lineages, even things like Advaita Vedanta, there is this attachment to secularity, especially secular vocabulary, and this fear of talking about the word God or understanding what is meant by the word God. And similarly for other spiritual notions. And it is stemming from a place that's unenlightened. So the opposite of the thing we're trying to do in spirituality, opposite of what this is really about. So I think the main reasons are fear of what other people think, and then some type of attachment to other people's attention so that we can increase the amount of attention we get, the amount of resources we get from people, the positive interactions we get from people. We are trying to tippy-toe and walk on eggshells to make that as easy as possible, which is understandable in practical means, but it's not correct in terms of like the truth of existence. And when you actually research what God means, well, it's not a word that denotes a limit. It's not a word that is to be taken superficially, even if some do, even if other people do that. It's more like maybe a label such as dark energy or dark matter, where we know there's all this stuff, this unknown, mysterious something out there, and we give it a term. The term doesn't limit it. The term doesn't say, oh, it's only these things. It is this open-ended word. But when you really research God through Gnostic, Abrahamic practices, or yoga, or Hinduism, or even Buddhism, you know that it's pointing at the infinite existence. And this is continuous across so many religions that there's a whole thing called perennial philosophy, because there are these similar repeated patterns talking about the infinite reality, the truth, God. And I think that sometimes maybe we try to use secular language to just increase our audience, to maybe help people approach meditation. And so there can be good intentions involved with it. But I think for the most part, it's a little bit of a fear-based thing. And I actually like something Sam Harris said, but I don't always like things Sam Harris says. And he basically said at one point it's just semantics. It's just the ultimate perfect reality, whether we call it God or emptiness or nirvana. It doesn't really matter what word we use. And I think we actually avoid true enlightenment, true consciousness, if we're spiraling in these reactive tendencies to a word like God, to a word like Shiva, to notions of abstract realities like the astral realm and stuff. Maybe the way people describe them isn't totally accurate, but just because someone maybe doesn't describe, say, quantum physics correctly, it doesn't make quantum physics wrong because somebody unknowledgeable misrepresents it. That's the same for God. Just because people in the past or currently might misrepresent infinite reality doesn't mean that there isn't this truth about infinite reality, about God. And I find it interesting. I find it intriguing why we feel that it's helpful to react fearfully, negatively, sensitively to this three-letter word, to something that is a notion, a sound wave, a set of symbols, denoting something grand, something beyond. And of course there's different intentions. People might mean slightly different things, but when you really research the core of what God is, then you can actually understand that it's not a limited thing. The reason I want to talk about this is I feel like there's rifts in the spiritual community, and there's tension in the spiritual community and just the world at large relating to spiritual attunement to God or gods, or spirit guides, astral planes, dream realms, and metaphysical realities we can't prove. We ought to come at these things with an open mind and skepticism, but to conclude that there's no way it's true, it's just baloney, and to just reduce reality to our senses, to science, to our perception is just an error. It's not this. And so if we wish to continue forth on the pursuit and the embodiment of truth and love and beingness, there's going to be this openness to God internally, not just externally, not just harmoniously, conversing and relating to, but there'll be a internal understanding, an internal wisdom. And if we're not sure, if we don't know, if we don't understand, then fighting that which we don't understand and disagreeing with that which we don't understand isn't really going to help us get to the truth. We ought to be like, well, I don't know, I'm not sure, I need a greater understanding, or maybe this concept of a deity I don't agree with, and this is a more mature path to take, this more agnostic path, and regardless of if we identify as atheist, agnostic, theist, for our own self, like our own joy, our own love, our own equanimity, our own pursuit of the truth, we shouldn't really react to something like this. This is not, this is small beans. Like, this is like not a thing that really we need to get worked up about. And this leads me to my final aspect of talking about God is I think people don't want to be forced to believe certain things. And I think that's an appropriate response and probably a natural backlash from centuries of oppression and forced belief. This part's understandable, but this isn't really what's happening much these days. It does still happen, but I'd say for most people, there's not really this forced belief about God yet. We might still react as if there is. But I don't think we need to believe in God. I don't believe in God. I know God exists. I don't need to believe in God. If I see a tree, I'm not like, I believe in the tree. So no, you just know there's a tree. But once you see the logic or the awakenment of perfect reality, well, you know that's what we were talking about for thousands of years. That's God. That's what even if the Buddhists use different language, well, an actual enlightened Buddhist isn't going to disagree with you if you're talking about Shiva. They know. They understand what you're pointing at is infinite this, that we all are. There's no rejection. There's no response. There's no irritation. There's no fight. There's no disharmony in the face of someone talking about God. And so it's not a belief that we're here for. It's not a belief I'm perpetuating. I don't believe in God. We don't need to believe in God. We need to know truth. Truth is what God is. That's what the sages were talking about for thousands and thousands of years. Like, that's the actual definition, just as much as, like I said, an astrophysicist might know what dark energy actually is. And so if people on YouTube or Instagram or pop scientists misrepresent that, well, it doesn't change what dark energy is actually referring to. Just because the Catholic and, Abrahamic churches may have done a lot of awful things over the centuries in the name of God, and they misrepresented God, doesn't mean like the actual pointing out of God is bad or wrong. It just means the infinite, all-permeating existence. And beyond that, beyond any word we can give it, and that's part of our capacity of awareness, is we can say something, we can point to something and understand that the thing is beyond the pointer, the thing is beyond the symbol, the territory is beyond the map. The reason I say this is because I watched, one, my friends react, people I know react, but two, I watched Alex O'Connor, prominent philosopher on YouTube, talk to one of the main proponents of Advaita Vedanta, Swami Sarva Priyananda, and he was very, he really didn't go in the realm of talking about God much. It was really talking about limitless reality, Brahman, using kind of like different words, and you could see like this retracting from the religious notion and more in terms of like logical, Advaita Vedantan notions. But the thing is, though that is what God is, like, you could see him not really wanting to use that word, even when Alex O'Connor asked if they are, synonymous. You could see a little resistance, you could see a little wordplay happening to kind of dance around it. But it's like, no, Brahman, when we talk about Brahman, when we say maybe Shiva, doesn't matter what word we use, Ram, Krishna, we're talking about the infinite God. And if other people come along and don't talk about it in those terms, that doesn't change it. Bhagavad Gita, Krishna shows his infinite fractal form beyond all lifetimes to Arjuna, says, I'm literally just everything, dude. It's literally everything. And so when we talk about Krishna, even just scripturally where that term originated, that's what we're talking about. And the notion of a deity, an undescript deity, which we just use the word God in English, it's kind of just Deva or Mahadeva in Sanskrit, or sometimes Brahman or Param Brahman. They have many more words in Hindi and Sanskrit, but it's talking about the same thing. And so enlightenment or awakening or realization or whatever is about realizing the reality that we are part of intimately, holistically. There's no part of ourselves that isn't one with reality, body, mind, feelings, whatever. Non-duality especially is about being that infinity from our awareness, from right here, right now, not needing anything else. And to actually communicate with ourselves, as in with the universe, which includes other people and other words and ideas and, patterns, we need to understand what they mean and where those words come from. If not, if we don't want to, that's okay. I'm not expecting everyone to go be like a statistician or a quantum physicist and understand all those terms. That's okay. But if we're seeking and following the spiritual path, there's a certain wisdom that understands okay, when people say God, the original meaning of that is just reality itself. It's like the thing we're seeking, the thing that's perfect, the truth of existence. Some people might, come up with other concepts and images surrounding it, but these are just impermanent, illusory things. We don't need to believe them, we don't need to act like them or think like them. We just need to know that the real term at its root, is talking about reality itself. There's lots of reasons for that, like most of religions, like even Buddhism, even though Buddha didn't talk about God, it's like he wasn't trying to make a whole other religion necessarily. He was just bringing forth things that he experienced as true, things that stopped suffering, things that helped liberate us, and shared them with the universe. And then people copied him, people wrote things down, we mimic, we make a thing out of really impressive beings. We make a whole cult following in a way. And that's the same for most religions, is that there were beings that had some sort of realization, and they had a certain level of wisdom and love and almost vibration, and then people follow it, people copy it, people think about it, regurgitate it and pass it along. But if those people that pass it along, religious followers, especially even hundreds of years later, get things wrong, there's no point in getting mad or upset or irritated or defensive in response to that. Even this isn't me like getting irritated or defensive. It's just putting it out there that like when we say God, especially as a realizer, it's pointing at existence itself. There is a semantic level to this. And then when you go beyond the semantic level and you digest people's intention, their meaning, because there's multiple words for the same meaning, or people can say something and mean something different, and it's what their consciousness is trying to convey. When we want to dive into true reality and be enlightened and, experience this part of existence, then we ought to digest what's actually being said, what's actually being meant. And that is where we're going to get the treasure of the moment, the treasure of our own existence. Not with trying to, stay PC, try to stay secular, try to not use language that people don't like, being afraid of their reactions or conflict, being attached to them being positive and praising us, or being attached to some level of popularity or resources that people give us when they agree with us. There's a lot of, I'd say mostly like weak reasons that we get a little scared to talk about what God really means. And to me, like I said, at the end of the day, it's like it doesn't matter what word we use. It's just a good word to use. It's like, I sometimes just say infinite, all-permeating existence. There's also like consciousness, existence, bliss, Satchitananda. There's the great perfection. There's emptiness in Buddhism. There's the infinite one, or just reality itself. The thing is, I use all of them pretty much equally, because there's no guarantee any one, symbolic conveyance of reality is going to help push people towards truth. And I think facing our reactions to this three-letter word, God, is also important to actually understand how to communicate, how to cooperate, and how to embody true reality. And if someone's trying to, be more dogmatic and push things upon us and belief systems and patterns of thinking, we don't need to do that. It's not right to just give in to that. And I'm not here to do that to you. I'm just here to explain, really, when God is used, or at least the way it should be used, is talking about the infinite now. the infinite existence we're all a part of, the unity of all things, the bounty and boundlessness of this reality that we can't summarize or limit with our mind. And, you know, maybe miracles could happen. So I'm not trying to like force you to believe that. You know, I've already outlined the logic of that. If you don't like the logic or you disagree, then in a way that's beautiful. I actually wish people disagreed more and we could have a conversation. But I feel it doesn't really happen. And I think it's just because people get kind of emotional in some form, or irritated or defensive in response to the word God. And I don't think that helps us get closer to the truth. I don't think it helps us get closer to what we seek. And I also don't think it helps us get closer to understanding reality, because it usually implies reducing reality to our own perception, our own senses, and our own scientific data, when we know for a fact that that is limited and that isn't the whole story. Scientists know this. The people we are adhering to for our own worldview know that it's an incomplete worldview. So if we want to actually achieve liberation and embodiment of truth, this is one little thorn in our side that we have to remove. That's all. You know, I didn't really like seeing Swami Sarvapriyananda kind of dance around the word. Most likely to just align with the atheistic, agnostic audience of Alex O'Connor. And that's fine, that's all good in certain ways. And I understand that reaction. It's a very human reaction, but I don't think it's an awakened reaction. I don't think it embodies that infinite, boundless, fearless love that is God. I think it's fear and weakness. And we don't need to do that, and it's going to hold us back from actually aligning with the infinite. So thank you so much for watching. Om Saram.